My fingers had turned blue. I couldn't feel my toes anymore. The basement floor beneath me felt like a sheet of ice as I lay there, my body convulsing with violent shivers. Family betrayal stories like mine happen more often than you think, when the people who should love you most leave you to die. I reached for my phone with trembling hands. The screen glowed in the dim light, showing my desperate texts. "Terrence, please answer. The heat stopped working." "Son, it's getting dangerously cold down here. I can't feel my hands anymore. Please call me." No response, just the delivered notification mocking me. Then a new notification appeared. Terrence had posted on social media. My numb fingers tapped the screen. There he was, my only child, smiling broadly on a white sand beach, his arm wrapped around Danielle, both holding tropical drinks with little umbrellas. The caption read, "Paradise found. #best vacation ever." I never thought the child I raised with my own hands would leave me to die in a freezing basement while he sipped cocktails on a beach. The son I had sacrificed everything for, my youth, my dreams, my savings, had locked me away and forgotten me like an unwanted pet? How does a mother's love turn into a death sentence? Let me show you exactly how it happens. If you've ever trusted family with your financial security, what happens next might save you from making the same mistake I did. Subscribe now to protect yourself. Also, download your ebook titled Suspense and Thriller Stories by clicking the link in the pinned comment. I was born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama, the oldest of 4 sisters in a modest home where the walls were thin but love ran thick. My mama was a force of nature, strong, wise, and deeply faithful. She'd often pull me aside while braiding my hair and say, "Lorraine, remember this. Family will be the hand that lifts you or the hand that pushes you down. Choose which one you want to be." I chose to lift every single time. When I was 24, I met Calvin Matthews at my cousin's wedding. He stood tall and confident in a navy suit, with a voice smooth as honey and eyes that crinkled when he laughed. 6 months later, we were married in the same church where I'd been baptized as a child. 9 months after that, I gave birth to our only child, Terrence. The moment they placed that squirming bundle in my arms, I felt a love so fierce it took my breath away. I promised him everything: safety, opportunity, happiness, even as Calvin watched from the doorway, already looking trapped. Calvin wasn't ready for fatherhood. He worked at the steel plant during the day and disappeared to bars at night. The drinking got worse, the arguments got louder. By the time Terrence turned 7, Calvin walked out our front door with a duffel bag and never looked back. Just like that, I became everything to Terrence: mother, father, provider, protector. I took double shifts as a nurse's aide at Meadowbrook K Center, earning $7.25 an hour to keep our little world turning. When Terrence needed $120 basketball sneakers because the other kids were teasing him about his worn-out shoes, I picked up weekend shifts. When he needed braces, I sold my mother silver to cover what insurance wouldn't. Every school trip, every doctor's appointment, every midnight fever, it was all me. And I did it gladly, without complaining. I'd look at his sleeping face at night and think, this boy is going to have everything I didn't. The years passed in a blur of lunch packing, homework checking, and bedtime stories. I missed school plays because I was working. I fell asleep at his basketball games from exhaustion. But Terrence thrived. He was smart, charming, and driven in a way that other parents took notice. "You've done a remarkable job with him," his high school principal told me at graduation, "especially on your own." 20 years of sacrifice, 20 years of putting him first. If only I knew the price I would pay for that devotion. Terrence's acceptance letter to Georgia State University came with a full academic scholarship. I cried when I read it, my hand shaking with pride. My boy, the first in our family to go to college. "This is because of you, Mama," he said, hugging me tight. "Everything I am is because of you." Those words would echo in my mind years later when everything changed. Terrence flourished in Atlanta. He majored in finance, graduated with honors, and landed a job at a prestigious investment firm. His voice on our weekly calls hummed with excitement about his new life, the sleek downtown office, the networking events, the future stretching bright before him. Then in his third year at the firm, he mentioned a name that would change everything. Danielle. "She's in marketing, Mama. Smart as a whip. You're gonna love her." 6 months later, I took the bus to Atlanta to meet this woman who had captured my son's heart. Danielle Wilson was undeniably beautiful, tall and slender with perfect makeup and clothes that looked expensive. She greeted me with a practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. Something in my stomach tightened when she hugged me, a brief, stiff embrace that felt like an obligation. But I pushed the feeling aside. My son was happy, and that was all that mattered. "Your son is quite the catch," she said, her hand possessively on Terrence's arm. "Not Terrence or your boy, your son." Like he was a prize she'd won. Throughout dinner, I noticed how Terrence watched her face for approval before speaking, how he laughed too loudly at her jokes, how different he seemed in her presence, less the confident man I'd raised and more like someone auditioning for a role. But I held my tongue. What mother doesn't worry about who her child loves? I told myself I was being overprotective, old-fashioned, maybe even a little jealous of sharing him. Their wedding day came faster than I expected. I wore a blue dress I'd saved 3 months to buy and sat in the second row, not the first, which was reserved for Danielle's large, boisterous family. Her mother, a sharp-featured woman with calculating eyes, orchestrated everything, including where I could stand in photos. During the reception, I stepped outside for some air and overheard Danielle's mother speaking to her in a quiet corner of the garden. "Just need to handle his mother properly. These attachment issues can become problems if you don't set boundaries early." Danielle nodded. "Don't worry, I know exactly how to handle Lorraine." They clinked glasses and laughed, not realizing I was there. The first warning came not in words, but in small gestures that I brushed aside. That was my first mistake. 3 years after the wedding, my body began to betray me. Decades of lifting patients and standing for 12-hour shifts had worn down my knees. Arthritis crept into my fingers, making simple tasks painful on bad days. The doctor recommended I consider retirement. "You've earned your rest, Miss Matthews," he said, reviewing my x-rays. My little house in Birmingham suddenly felt too big, too empty, too full of stairs that made my knees scream. The mortgage was paid off, but property taxes and maintenance costs ate into my modest pension. That's when Terrence called, with what seemed like a heaven-sent solution. "Mama, Danielle and I have been talking. Our house has that finished basement apartment, private bathroom, kitchenette, separate entrance. Why don't you sell your place and move in with us? You'll have your own space, and we'll be right upstairs if you need anything." My heart swelled. My son wanted me close. After years of sacrifice, this felt like the universe returning the favor. "Are you sure Danielle's okay with this?" I asked cautiously. "It was her idea," he assured me. "She worries about you being alone." 2 months later, I sold my Birmingham home for $180,000. I gave Terrence and Danielle $65,000 for renovations to the basement apartment and to contribute to household expenses. The rest went into my savings, security for my golden years. The basement apartment was lovely. Freshly painted walls, new carpet, a small but functional kitchenette.
Danielle had placed vases of fresh flowers on the coffee table and nightstand. "Welcome home, Lorraine," she said with that same practiced smile. "We want you to be comfortable." Those first few weeks felt like a dream. Terrence would come down after work to chat. Danielle brought me tea in the evenings. I could hear their footsteps above me, the comforting sounds of family life continuing while I read or watched my shows. I thought I'd found my forever home, a place to age with dignity, surrounded by love. 3 months. That's how long it took me to realize I hadn't moved into a home. I'd walked straight into a trap.
The changes came so gradually, I almost didn't notice them, like water slowly rising around your ankles until suddenly you're drowning. It started with the kitchen upstairs. I'd go up in the mornings to make my coffee and chat with Terrence before he left for work. One Tuesday, Danielle intercepted me at the top of the stairs. "Lorraine," she said, her voice honey-sweet but her eyes cold. "I've organized the upstairs kitchen just how I like it. Would you mind using your kitchenette downstairs? It's just that I have a system." I nodded, swallowing my disappointment. "Of course, dear, no problem." A week later, she mentioned that my television was a bit loud in the evenings. "Sound travels in this house," she explained, "and Terrence needs his rest for work." Then came restrictions on visitors. When my sister Bernice came to stay for the weekend, Danielle pulled me aside. "Next time, could you give us more notice? We like to plan our weekends carefully." Each new rule came with a reasonable explanation. Each boundary seemed small on its own, but together they formed invisible bars around my life. Terrence noticed, but said nothing. When I mentioned Danielle's kitchen system, he just shrugged. "You know how she is about organization, Mama. It's easier to just go along with it." The first real battle came over the thermostat in October, when the Georgia nights turned cool. My arthritis flared in the cold, making my fingers stiff and painful. The basement, partially underground, stayed chillier than the rest of the house. One evening, I adjusted the thermostat from 68 to 72 degrees. The next morning, Terrence came down before work, looking uncomfortable. "Mama, did you change the thermostat last night?" "Yes, baby. My joints were aching from the cold." He shifted his weight, not meeting my eyes. "Danielle noticed the heat running all night. Our energy bill was really high last month. We need to keep costs down, Mama." "But my arthritis." "Maybe wear warmer clothes, or use that throw blanket we got you." I stared at my son. The boy I'd worked overtime to buy medicine for when he had strep throat. The teenager I stayed up with all night when he had exam anxiety. Now he was telling me to put on a sweater while my joints throbbed with pain. That evening, I heard them arguing upstairs. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but their voices carried through the vents. "She's not a child, Danielle. She's my mother. And this is our house. Our bills, our rules. You said yourself we need to save for our future." "I know, but..." "But what? You want to prioritize her comfort over our financial security? Over the plans we made?" A long pause. Then Terrence's defeated voice. "No, you're right." The next day, while they were at work, I found a receipt in the kitchen trash when I was emptying my small bin. Danielle had spent $3,500 on new living room furniture, delivered the same week she complained about the heating bill. By winter, the temperature wasn't the only thing dropping in that house. My son's humanity was freezing over too. The digital lock appeared on the door to the upstairs in November. I came home from my weekly grocery trip to find Terrence installing it, a sleek black keypad where the regular doorknob had been. "What's this?" I asked, setting down my bags. "Just upgrading our security," he said, not meeting my eyes. "There've been break-ins a few neighborhoods over."
Do I get a code? He hesitated. Of course, Mama. It's 4589. That night, I tried the code. The door remained locked. I tried again, thinking I'd made a mistake. Nothing. I texted Terrence, who was upstairs. The code isn't working. 10 minutes later, he came down looking flustered. Sorry, Mama, Danielle reset it during setup. Try 6241. This code worked, but 3 days later, it didn't. This pattern repeated, a working code that mysteriously reset every few days, always requiring me to ask Terrence for the new one. Eventually, I stopped trying. The thermostat battles worsened. I'd adjust it up when my arthritis flared, only to find it lowered again hours later. Danielle had installed a smart thermostat she could control from her phone. Sometimes I'd watch the temperature drop in real time, the numbers ticking down while I sat wrapped in blankets. My health began to suffer. The cold made my arthritis worse, turning simple tasks like buttoning my cardigan into painful ordeals. My knees stiffened, making the stairs to the outside world more challenging. When I mentioned needing to see my rheumatologist, Terrence promised to drive me, but on appointment day, he called with an emergency at work. The next appointment was forgotten because Danielle had scheduled a dinner with her boss. The third one was canceled because their car wouldn't start. Yet there were moments, small kindnesses from Terrence that kept hope flickering. A heating pad he brought home one day. A cup of my favorite tea left outside my door. A quick visit downstairs to check on me when Danielle was out with friends. During one of these visits, I finally confronted him. Son, what's happening here? I feel like a prisoner. He looked pained. Don't say that, Mama. We're just adjusting. To what? Me being treated like an unwanted guest? You need to understand, Mama, this is Danielle's house too. She has a right to feel comfortable in her own home. And what about my comfort? My dignity? He stood up, suddenly defensive. We took you in, didn't we? We gave you a place to stay. Took me in? I paid $65,000 toward this house. For renovations, he corrected. Look, everything we do is for your own good. The security, the temperature, it's all for your own good. That phrase became their mantra. When they accidentally forgot to tell me about family dinner upstairs, it's for your own good, Mama. You need your rest. When they changed the Wi-Fi password, it's for your own good, less screen time. When they started having my mail delivered to a key-locked box, it's for your own good. Mail theft is common. For your own good, for your own good, for your own good. Would you confront your child directly or try to preserve peace at all costs? I chose peace, and it nearly cost me everything. If someone you love is changing before your eyes, you need to recognize the warning signs. Hit subscribe now. What I'm about to share might be happening to you. The vacation announcement wasn't a surprise. What shocked me was what they'd secretly arranged while they were gone.
January brought the coldest winter Georgia had seen in decades. Frost patterns decorated my basement windows each morning, and my breath clouded in the air as I made my morning tea. Terrence came downstairs on a Thursday evening, looking unusually cheerful. He hadn't visited my apartment in nearly 2 weeks. Mama, great news! Danielle got a bonus at work, and we're taking a trip to Cancun. 2 weeks of sunshine and beaches. I forced a smile. That sounds wonderful, baby. When are you going? We leave Saturday morning, he said, already turning to go back upstairs. My heart dropped. This Saturday? As in 2 days from now?
Yeah, last-minute deal. Too good to pass up. But the weather forecast, they're saying we might get record lows next week. He waved dismissively. The house has central heating, Mama. You'll be fine. The system's programmed to keep it at 65 degrees. 65? In a basement? During record cold? My arthritis screamed at the very thought. Terrence, that's too cold for my condition. You know that. His face hardened slightly. We can't afford to heat an empty house to 72 degrees for 2 weeks, Mama. Use your space heater if you need to, but keep it on low. Those things use a lot of electricity. Before I could respond, Danielle appeared at the top of the stairs. Terrence, did you tell her about our trip? Her voice was light, but her eyes watched me carefully. Just did, he called back. She descended a few steps, not fully coming into my space. Lorraine, while we're gone, remember to keep that space heater on low, okay? We don't want to come back to a crazy electric bill. She smiled, but her eyes remained cold. And the security system will be armed, so don't worry about safety. What she meant was, don't try to go upstairs. Saturday morning arrived with frost so thick it looked like snow. The local news warned of an Arctic blast moving in, temperatures possibly dropping into the teens by midweek. Their departure was rushed. Terrence wheeled their suitcases to the car while Danielle made a show of checking the thermostat one last time. It's set to 65. That should be plenty. Terrence gave me a quick, awkward hug. We'll text when we land. Love you, Mama. And then they were gone, the sound of their car fading as they drove away. The first night was bearable. I wore 2 sweaters and thick socks, huddled under blankets as I watched TV. The space heater hummed nearby, taking the worst edge off the chill. But Sunday brought the first wave of the cold front. Outside, temperatures plunged to 25 degrees. Inside my basement apartment, the chill deepened. I checked the thermostat. It read 62, not 65. Someone had adjusted it remotely. Then around 9 p.m., the central heat stopped working altogether. The vents went silent. I waited, thinking it might be cycling, but an hour passed with no warm air. I tried to go upstairs to check the main thermostat, but the digital lock had been changed again. My code didn't work. I called Terrence, straight to voicemail. I texted, "The heat stopped working. What should I do?" No response. I tried Danielle's phone. Nothing. By Monday morning, my apartment was 52 degrees and dropping. My fingers had stiffened so badly I could barely hold my phone. I sent more texts, left more voicemails. Nothing. I tried calling their neighbor, Miss Denise, but got no answer there either. Later, I learned they were visiting family in Michigan. Tuesday brought the worst of the cold snap. Outside, it was 15 degrees. Inside my basement, it had dropped to 45. I could see my breath. My space heater couldn't keep up with the plummeting temperature. I dragged my mattress next to it, creating a small tent with my blankets to trap what little heat it generated. My body began to shut down. First came the violent shivering, then the drowsiness, a dangerous sign I recognized from my nursing days. My movements became clumsy, uncoordinated. Simple tasks like making tea became impossible as my fingers refused to grip properly. By Wednesday morning, I was drifting in and out of consciousness. The cold had become a physical presence, a weight pressing down on my chest. I crawled toward my phone, each movement an agony of stiff joints and numb limbs. I tried Terrence one last time. His Instagram showed a new post, him and Danielle swimming with dolphins, posted an hour ago. With trembling fingers, I dialed 911. The phone slipped from my grasp twice before I managed to complete the call. 911? What's your emergency? Cold, I stammered, my lips barely able to form words. So cold. By the time I managed to call 911, my fingers were too numb to feel the phone. The paramedic later told me I was hours from death.
I woke to the steady beep of monitors and the sting of an IV in my arm. White ceiling, antiseptic smell, hospital. Fragments of memory returned. Paramedics breaking through my basement door, lifting my rigid body onto a stretcher, their urgent voices fading in and out as I drifted between consciousness and darkness. "She's here," one had radioed. "Severe hypothermia. Core temp 92.3. A doctor stood at my bedside now, a woman with kind eyes and a stern mouth. She checked my vitals, her touch gentle but clinical. "Miss Matthews, you're at Northside Hospital. You were brought in with severe hypothermia. Do you understand what I'm saying?" I nodded weakly. "Your core temperature was dangerously low. Another night in those conditions, and we'd be having a very different conversation." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "The paramedics reported your home's heating system was functional, but turned off. Can you tell me what happened?" Before I could answer, the door burst open. Terrence rushed in, still wearing shorts and a tropical shirt, his face a mask of concern. Danielle followed, her tan contrasting with her cold eyes. "Mama!" Terrence grabbed my hand. "What happened? We got calls from the hospital and the police." "Police?" My voice was a rasp. The doctor interjected. "Standard procedure when we suspect neglect or endangerment of an elderly person." Danielle's face tightened. "Endangerment? That's ridiculous. We were on vacation." "In a home with no heat during record low temperatures," the doctor replied evenly. "The heat was programmed," Danielle snapped. "She must have turned it off." I closed my eyes, too exhausted to defend myself. The doctor asked them to step outside while she finished her examination. As they left, I heard Danielle hiss to Terrence in the hallway. "We had to cut our vacation short because she couldn't manage a simple heater? This is exactly why we need to move forward with the plan." "Not now," Terrence whispered back. "Yes, now. She's becoming a liability. What if she tries something like this again for attention?" Their voices faded as they moved down the corridor, but their words burned into my brain. Attention? They thought I'd nearly frozen to death for attention? When Terrence returned alone, I studied his face, the face I'd memorized as a baby, cherished as a child, celebrated as a man. But now I saw a stranger wearing my son's face, someone cold and calculating, shaped by Danielle's influence into something unrecognizable. "The doctor says you can come home tomorrow," he said, not meeting my eyes. Home. The word felt hollow now. 3 days later, back at their house, I found something they never meant for me to see, a document that revealed their true plan all along. Recovery was slow.
My body, already weakened by age and arthritis, had been pushed to its limits. The cold had damaged nerves in my extremities, leaving my fingertips perpetually numb. A constant reminder of how close I'd come to death.
Terrence and Danielle maintained the fiction that I'd somehow caused the heating failure. They spoke to me with the slow, exaggerated patience one uses with a troublesome child. "Next time, just call us if something goes wrong," Terrence said, as if I hadn't sent dozens of unanswered texts. "We were so worried," Danielle added, though her eyes remained flat and cold. Something had shifted inside me during those frozen hours when I thought I might die. The fog of maternal devotion had lifted, revealing the harsh landscape of my reality. I began watching them closely, listening for clues, searching for the truth they were hiding. My opportunity came when they both left for a day trip to visit Danielle's parents. They'd been whispering more than usual, exchanging meaningful glances when they thought I wasn't looking. Something was brewing. As soon as their car disappeared down the street, I began my search. Not the obvious places, their bedroom or bathroom, but Terrence's home office, where he kept important documents. The bottom drawer of his desk was locked, but I found the key taped under his keyboard tray, the same hiding spot he'd used for his diary key as a teenager. Some habits never change. Inside the drawer lay a folder labeled Property Relocation. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first document was a property listing agreement, ready for signatures. They were planning to sell the house, this house that contained my apartment, my home, my $65,000 investment. The listing price? $400,000. Next came brochures for homes in Naples, Florida. One was circled in red marker, a sprawling ranch-style house with a pool priced at $650,000. Paperclipped to it was a mortgage pre-approval letter. But the document that stopped my heart was a glossy pamphlet for Golden Sunset Senior Living, an assisted living facility in North Atlanta. Attached was a partially completed application with my name on it. Monthly cost? $3,800. Underpayment method? Someone had written resident savings until depleted, then Medicaid. They plan to warehouse me in a facility, drain my savings, and move to Florida with the profits from selling the house I had helped pay for. There was no mention of repaying my $65,000 contribution, no consideration for my wishes, no respect for my autonomy. The grief hit me first, a wave so powerful I had to sit on the floor, clutching the papers to my chest as tears streamed down my face. This was my son, my baby, planning to discard me like an outdated appliance. Then, like a switch flipping, the grief hardened into something else. Determination. Cold, clear-eyed resolve. I carefully photographed every document with my phone, returned everything exactly as I'd found it, and locked the drawer. At what point does family betrayal justify cutting all ties? I was about to find out. What would you do if your own child betrayed you this deeply? Subscribe now because my next move changed everything. I waited 3 days, watching them, noting their patterns, preparing myself mentally for what had to be done. I chose a Sunday evening when they were both home, relaxed after dinner, guards down. I walked upstairs without knocking, a small act of rebellion that immediately caught their attention. "Mama." Terrence looked surprised. "Do you need something?" "Yes," I said calmly, sitting across from them. "I need to talk about your plans to sell this house and put me in Golden Sunset." The color drained from Terrence's face. Danielle's eyes narrowed to slits.
You went through our private papers, she accused. Yes, I admitted. Just like you went through my mail, controlled my heat, and planned my future without my consent. Terrence recovered quickly. Mama, we were going to discuss this with you. Golden Sunset is a nice place. That costs $3,800 a month, I finished for him, which you expect my savings to cover until I'm broke enough for Medicaid. It's a practical solution, Danielle cut in. You need more care than we can provide. More care? I laughed bitterly. You left me to freeze to death. That was an accident, Terrence insisted. Was it? Or was it a convenient solution to your problem? I looked directly at Danielle as I said this. Her face remained impassive, but a muscle twitched in her jaw. You're being dramatic, she said. Am I? You've been isolating me, restricting me, making my life so uncomfortable that any change would seem like an improvement. That's textbook elder abuse, Danielle. Terrence stood up, his face flushed. That's enough, Mama. We took you in when you had nowhere else to go. We gave you a home. No, I said quietly. I helped pay for this home. $65,000 of my money went into this house. For renovations, Danielle corrected automatically. For equity. I had the transfer receipts and the text messages where Terrence promised it was an investment in my future. Terrence's expression hardened into something I'd never seen before, a cold dismissal that broke my heart all over again. This is our house, Mama. 5 words that severed the last threads of our relationship. Danielle, sensing victory, finally dropped her mask completely. You were never supposed to be permanent, Lorraine. This arrangement was always temporary, until we figured out a better solution. A better solution for whom? I asked. For everyone, she insisted. You're not happy here. We're not happy with this arrangement. Golden Sunset is the logical next step. I stood up slowly, my decision made. I'll be gone by the end of the week. Terrence looked startled. Gone? Where would you go? That's no longer your concern. I walked back downstairs with as much dignity as my aching knees would allow. Once in my apartment, I picked up my phone and called my sister Bernice in Montgomery. We hadn't been close in years, another casualty of my single-minded devotion to Terrence, but I knew she would answer. She picked up on the second ring. Moraine? Is everything okay? No, I said, my voice steady despite the tears streaming down my face. But it will be. I need to leave here, Bernice. I need to come to you. There was no hesitation, no questions, just immediate acceptance. I've been waiting for this call, she said softly. Pack your bags. Tonight. I'll be there tomorrow to get you. Bernice arrived the next morning in her sensible sedan, face set with determination. She'd brought her son-in-law, Keith, a broad-shouldered man who loaded my suitcases efficiently while Terrence watched from the driveway, looking lost. You don't have to do this, Mama, he said, reaching for my arm. I stepped back from his touch. Yes, I do. Danielle stood in the doorway, arms crossed, barely concealing her satisfaction. What they didn't know was that I'd already set my plan in motion. The day after discovering their documents, I'd contacted a lawyer, Patricia Gaines, a sharp-eyed woman who specialized in elder law and financial abuse cases. Don't confront them until you're ready to leave, she'd advised, and don't tell them about me. 2 days after arriving at Bernice's, I returned to Atlanta, not to Terrence's house, but to Patricia's office. I brought everything. Bank statements showing my $65,000 transfer, text messages discussing my investment in the property, emails where Terrence had called it your home too, Mama. They never added you to the deed, Patricia noted, reviewing the documents. No. Terrence said it would complicate things with their mortgage. She nodded grimly. A common tactic. But Georgia recognizes constructive trusts in cases like yours. You provided funds with a specific understanding about your interest in the property. We filed a lis pendens, a legal claim against the property that prevented them from selling until our case was resolved. The $65,000 contribution, with interest over 3 years, now amounted to $95,000. They'll have to buy you out if they want to sell, Patricia explained. The certified letter arrived at their house exactly 1 week after I'd left. I knew precisely when they received it because I'd asked Bernice's grandson to install a small security camera on the tree across from their mailbox, ostensibly to make sure my remaining belongings were safe. The footage showed Danielle collecting the mail, opening the official-looking envelope on the front porch, her face transforming from curiosity to shock to rage. She ran inside, letter clutched in her fist. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Terrence's number. I didn't answer. He called 5 more times, then texted, "Mama, what are you doing? A lien on our house? Lawyers? This isn't you." I replied with a single sentence. This is exactly who I had to become. 3 days later, they appeared at Bernice's door. Uninvited, unexpected. Danielle's face was tight with fury. Terrence looked haggard, confused. "You can't do this," she spat. "You can't hold our house hostage." I stood in the doorway, Bernice's solid presence beside me, and felt a strange calm. "No, darling. How could you do this to me?" Terrence stepped forward. "Mama, please, we can work this out. Come home and we'll talk." "That was never my home," I interrupted. "That was a holding cell until you could dispose of me." "That's not true." But his eyes slid away from mine. "I have the documents, Terrence. The Golden Sunset brochures, the Florida house plans, all of it." Something shifted in his expression then, the first glimmer of understanding about what he had done, who he had become. For a moment, I saw my son again, buried beneath layers of Danielle's influence and his own weakness. "I never meant to hurt you," he whispered. "But you did. And now there are consequences."
The legal proceedings took 4 months. Terrence and Danielle fought the claim initially, but their lawyer advised settlement after reviewing my evidence. They were forced to refinance their mortgage to pay me $95,000 from my equity stake, plus $15,000 in legal fees. Their dreams of a Florida paradise evaporated. The housing market dipped, making their planned upgrade impossible with the additional debt. Danielle was furious. Terrence was subdued. Meanwhile, Bernice and I pooled our resources and bought a modest ranch-style home in a quiet Montgomery neighborhood. Single level with wide doorways and a walk-in shower, perfect for aging knees and potential mobility issues down the road. Most importantly, it had an excellent heating system that kept the whole house warm during winter. "This is what family really means," Bernice said as we arranged furniture in our shared living room. "Lifting each other up, not pushing each other down." We fell into an easy rhythm together. Morning coffee on the patio, tending the small garden, hosting our remaining sisters for Sunday dinners. My health improved away from the cold basement. My spirit healed in the warmth of genuine care. Terrence called occasionally. The conversations were strained at first, filled with awkward pauses and careful words. He never directly apologized, but I heard the regret in his voice. "Danielle's not happy about how things turned out," he admitted during one call. "Are you?" I asked. A long pause. "I don't know who I am anymore, Mama." 6 months after I left, I received an anonymous letter with an Atlanta postmark. Inside was a note and newspaper clippings about Danielle's first marriage, a brief union that ended when her husband's mother became ill and needed care. The note read simply, "You're not the first. She did the same to Robert's mother. I wish I'd warned you. M." I later learned through mutual acquaintances that M was Margaret,
Danielle's former mother-in-law, who had been pressured to move into assisted living when her son married Danielle. History repeating itself, with my son cast in the same role as Danielle's ex-husband. The revelation didn't bring me joy or vindication, just a profound sadness for my son, still trapped in a marriage with a woman who saw family as disposable. But I had learned my lesson. Sacrifice doesn't guarantee loyalty. Sometimes loving yourself means walking away from those who should have loved you most. The azaleas Bernice and I planted last spring have bloomed, painting our front yard in vibrant pinks and purples. Our home has become a gathering place for family, a warm, welcoming haven where the thermostat stays at a comfortable 72 degrees year-round. My arthritis still flares on rainy days, but I found a good rheumatologist who prescribed medication that actually works. My fingers can hold a crochet hook again. My knees can manage the 3 steps to our porch without screaming in protest. I've made new friends at the community center where I volunteer twice a week, teaching young mothers how to budget and save, passing on the hard-won wisdom of my years. There's a particular satisfaction in helping others avoid the financial traps I fell into. Terrence calls monthly now. Last week, he mentioned that he and Danielle are taking some time apart. He didn't elaborate, and I didn't press. Some journeys a person must walk alone. "I miss you, Mama," he said before hanging up. "I miss the son I raised," I replied honestly. The truth is, I don't know if Terrence and I will ever fully repair our relationship. Trust, once shattered, doesn't easily mend. But I've learned to hold space for possibility without sacrificing my boundaries. This morning, I sat on our patio with my coffee, watching the sun rise over our quiet street. Bernice joined me, her presence a comfortable silence beside me. "Any regrets?" she asked. I considered the question carefully. I regret not seeing the truth sooner. I regret giving away my power, but I don't regret reclaiming it. She nodded, understanding. The lessons were hard, but clear. Family should lift you up, not leave you to freeze. Love without respect is just control in disguise, and it's never too late to rewrite your story. Subscribe now for more stories of survival and justice, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? Lastly, download your ebook titled Suspense and Thriller Stories by clicking the link in the pinned comment.